Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing this evening? Well, don't worry, I'm not alone. At least I think I'm not alone. Okay.
I'm sorry, I was a little bit slow.
All
Good
right.
evening, Granville. Good
Good,
evening, everyone.
good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing this evening, this Thursday evening? Well, we've got a heartwarming session today. I must admit, it's something that is quite close to our heart, and we've got someone joining us today. I think it's a really special person. Her name is Debbie Bailey, and she's going to share with us what she's doing in Hong Kong. I must say, it's really special. At least we think it's special, and then we'll get to hear from her what exactly she's doing to make a difference in Hong Kong. So today's topic is, oh dear, I should have gotten rid of my notes first. No, was
Never
that
mind.
loud or what?
Again, we're still learning. We're having fun with this.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So, our
Anyway,
topic today is empathy and compassion,
that's right. Empathy and
something very
compassion.
close to our
Right.
heart.
The elusive quality that melts the heart and strengthens hope. So that is one of the competencies in our EQ model. And later on when Debbie comes in, she's actually one of our well, no, can't say ex-participant, yeah, but she joined us for our EQ certification last year. It was right, just very recently. And
Yes.
we'll talk about more about her in about half an hour's time, and she's coming into the room. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, let's get right into the topic and talk
Sure.
about this elusive quality. We call it an elusive quality for certain reasons. And before we explain what we meant by elusive quality, what's your introduction to empathy? Empathy or compassion? Of course, that definition we leave it to Debbie.
Okay. Well, I think I've said this in one of the other sessions, and basically, I feel it's from the time I've grown up. I feel that with mom and dad, we've always been in an environment about giving. And from young, we were always taught that, other people have it worse than us. And you start to have feelings and you start to recognize that we are very blessed in so many ways. And so, definitely, there's this. Well, I wouldn't know whether at that point I would have called it empathy. I've only understood it as we had to be kind to other people. We had to be able to give to other people,
Yeah.
And so I think that was always instilled in us from a really, really young age.
Yeah.
But I think it really started for me being able to feel for people a lot better when I became a mom. Having had children and recognizing that my feelings and yes, I had to learn to put aside my own ways and my own feelings and start to understand what others were going through. And so I think having children was my great awakening.
I would
Yeah.
think so, especially because you were a wild child. And
Thank you.
so as a
Eh.
wild child that would have stopped at 20 to 21, then suddenly you get a kid and followed by another 2 or 3 years, you get another kid. Yeah, what was that transition like, from someone who had a active life outside, from
Yeah.
pageants and proms and parties and modeling and
Mm.
all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely love my social life. I definitely love being able to go out. But I think that at some point in my life, I kind of always knew that I'd like to be a mother. I loved watching the way mom was with us. And, mom was like role model for me in so many ways. So I think I followed her in a lot of ways of being. Again, if you look at the Enneagram, which we also talk about, she's very type 2, which is the nurturer, the caregiver, etc. And so I think I learned a lot of things from her. And so I knew at some point I'd like to be a mother. But again, vanity got in the way. And I said, if I was going to be a mother, I should be a mother as quickly as possible, get over and done with, so that I can get my figure back, as well as get back to my career.
That sounds
So that's why I said I don't think there was much empathy there. I would say there was a lot more, there was feelings for other people, but maybe not knowing how to, it took me a while to learn that other people's feelings was also important. I mean, I'm the youngest child. I was a bit spoiled, what can I say?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you're a youngest child too, so maybe you understand that too.
I was just about to say youngest children are usually spoiled like that. Well, there are some
Yeah.
exceptions, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your story with empathy?
Well, okay, mine isn't as dramatic.
Dramatic. Thank you very much.
Just mine is a mild one, but it was well, to me it was interesting because back in actually it's my second job. My second job, there was an email coming into the team of about 15 people, and that email said, "Can someone help me to visit a client because today I'm training again." This was in the training industry, And this person said, can you help me to visit my client because I'm training today? So I think most of us, whenever we can't do it, at least I can't say most of us, but at least I do it. Whenever I can't do it, I'll just email anyway and just say something like, and this is what I said. I said, unfortunately, today I can't because I'm also training. But the next time when you have an opportunity, I'll definitely oblige. And the response I got was, I wanted empathy, not sympathy. At that point, many years ago, I was thinking, what's the difference? I know they sound alike. The first two letters are different. What's the difference between sympathy and empathy? And of course, we leave that to Debbie to also explain later on.
Poor Debbie, I hope she knows what she's getting herself into.
She was looking up the dictionary, right? But anyway, she knows it at the back of her head.
Of course, yes.
But I found out something very interesting about that. Even though the guy was trying to be sarcastic with me, I found out that empathy had some action element, whereas the sympathy part is just understanding or recognizing. I would say recognizing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I understood that. Okay, so it's about acting. It's about taking some action for someone else, but at the same time, of course, it's about stepping into somebody else's shoes. So that was an interesting introduction. And in our lives, we would have done this in different forms, but we just don't think how much we do and whether that's really empathy or that's social skills. There's a thin line or a fine line between the two.
Exactly. I mean, community service, sometimes we do it out of obligation, right? So I think at a younger age, if you had asked me, I wouldn't have known the difference because it was always about taking action for us. So, but whether or not I was really being able to feel what they were going through, I can't exactly say that, I totally understood it, so that's where even when we start talking about the word compassion, I started to get very confused at one point, right? Because I think even from religion-wise, the way we're brought up, we're always told that we have to be compassionate for other people. And, I guess sometimes when it comes with religion, compassion just sounds like giving money and contributing to charity, right? Yeah. So you get a little bit of a warped vision. I wouldn't say that it's bad. It's just that everybody has a different way, your upbringing, your religion, your education, the people around you, for you, going into work and hearing from other people. So we're going to get so many different kinds of experiences.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
This part about, are you conditioned? Do your life experiences make you more empathic? Or do you think people are born with empathy? They're born just out of the womb and boom, they start offering their hands. But anyway, you know what I mean, right?
Yes, I know. Yeah. But I'd like, I guess, that's always going to be the question, right? Whether people are naturally empathic. I mean, research shows one thing, but then sometimes when you look around the world and then you wonder, is that really true that that's the percentage, right? So I believe we definitely are born with the feelings to sense for others. That's what the mirror neurons are all about, right? The science behind it. But I guess along the way, the conditioning either strengthens it and grows it, or it just makes certain people jaded and immune to it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
This is a very hard debate or discussion when it comes to between. We can't say between the two because obviously the combination is what makes people, if you look at, say, personality and life experiences, they contribute to make us who we are.
Exactly.
So I can't say which is more, but I definitely do think that, for example, if you got parents, if you grow up in a family where they are doing social work, where they are offering their time and they're offering their services in a certain time of the week, and you as a kid, right, basically you follow whatever your parents do, where they go, whatever they say, you just follow, and it becomes a conditioned response.
Exactly.
So as a conditioned response, at some point you don't think what you do, you just do. And it becomes a belief system, right? So I think conditioning definitely plays a huge role in and the family you're in.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, of course, it does also still give people hope that even if your family is not like that, your personality sometimes comes in, right? I mean, so the whole thing about nature versus nurture, hard to say, but in many ways, it is so different for everyone. So I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, and I definitely feel that even though all the siblings were exposed to this lifestyle of doing charity work and all that, as we became adults, we all expressed it in different ways based on, and I think I shared this at one of our sessions where I was talking about, not in Heart Talk, but basically in one of our EQ programs, where I felt like, okay, if it wasn't convenient for me, then I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't take action. So again, it was like, maybe at that point it's like we're so busy, we're so caught up in our own lives that we only really think about, it's quite natural for us to think about ourselves first. And
Yeah.
at that point of my life when I was struggling as a single mom, with the young business, the young children and sick parents, it was not easy to do. So working in church, doing service in church was still okay, but I wouldn't stretch myself any further because I had different priorities. My family had to come first.
It's funny, while you were sharing that story, this strange story, of course, it's a true story, just emerged. And while it's really embarrassing, of course, I tell all my embarrassing stories anyway. But
It's okay.
yeah,
We're very straightforward.
it was my real introduction to empathy when I was probably 12 to 13 years old. So what happened was I used to have these arowana fish, right? They call them kimling. And we used to need to, do you know this story? Yeah, I think you would.
No, share with me.
We used to feed them little frogs. Okay, this is not nice, but anyway, right? We used to feed them little
Oh
frogs.
my goodness.
Yeah. So I used to go and buy these things, and so I had 2 bags of them. I had another bag of goldfish, and then in another hand, I had a can of Coke. And then I boarded a bus, and it happened to be a bus that was speeding like it felt like 140, 150 km/h, and the bus had to jam brake at the red light, right? Suddenly you just jam brake, and I flew from the front of the bus to the back of the bus, where the Coke just splashed on my face, and the bag of frogs just flew in the bus. And not only did those bags fly in the bus, they also broke, right? I mean,
Oh
they
no.
and then little
All
frog.
right.
And of course, the level of embarrassment of falling down and rolling in the bus. But
Yeah.
so the reason why I told that story was because it's funny. Out of about maybe 25 people in the bus, 15 people rushed to the front. I could almost count 15 people rushing to the front and trying to lift me up and wipe my face. And I was thinking, is that my mom or what? Like I had so many moms
Oh,
around.
that's so sweet. That's so sweet. Okay.
Singapore, mind you.
Yeah.
Why I say Singapore, mind you.
Exactly.
It's
No, I
good.
mean, that's the whole thing, right? I mean, you think about it, when we talk about here in Singapore, a lot of people say Singaporeans are quite compassionless, that they're so busy rushing, and people definitely feel sympathy, they feel pity, they feel sad for you, they feel sorry for you. Oh, poor thing fell down, or your frogs. Okay, see, now I'm laughing. Obviously, I don't have much sympathy for you. I know you too
Okay.
well. Okay, stop laughing. Okay, but honestly, had been in that situation, yeah, but for people to actually come up and take action and support you and want to help you, I think that's amazing. And you're talking about, how old were you then?
Okay, so now is what? 2020, right?
Oh no, the age thing again. Yeah.
And I was young. So the reason why I told that story was because that incident sort of shifted my mind about the importance of empathy. I mean, for me, yeah, sometimes we step up for people and we just do it because sometimes we feel
Yeah,
bad, or sometimes we feel, okay,
exactly.
somebody needs help, so let me just offer. But especially when you're in need and somebody comes to your aid, and then
Yeah,
I guess it needs that kind of emotional lift. And when you get that emotional lift, you feel like, oh wow, you helped me when I needed it most. And you almost feel like
exactly.
reciprocating in future in advance, knowing that if something, it doesn't have to be similar, but if something happens to someone else, I want to do it. So
Of
those real,
course, of
yeah,
course.
so
Yeah.
those real
There's that ripple
experiences.
effect.
That's right. Those real
Yeah,
experiences make you want to do it. And I guess the
yeah,
more experiences we have, I think it really helps
yeah.
us.
I
That people
mean,
good.
that's what they say, right? You pay the way forward. People do something for you. I mean, you don't do it just because somebody's done it for me, so I want to do it in return. But it's that feel good feeling that somebody supported you, somebody understood you, somebody did something for you. And even if they didn't do anything, just being there for you is such a boost it really uplifts you, that you definitely want to pay the way forward and you want to do it for somebody else, without wanting anything in return.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that is so important. Yeah.
Let's ask our viewers a question, and let's get some. Although we don't have ready a poll, but
Oh, actually, we've got quite a few comments here. All right.
that's fast. Okay.
Okay. No, you ask your question first. Sorry, Gwen.
Okay. So my question is, wherever you are calling or not calling, wherever you are watching from, whether Singapore, Hong Kong, or Australia, wherever, based on your
US.
yeah, or the US, that's right. Based on your experiences, how empathic are the people around you in your country? 100% being, wow, really very empathic.
Yeah.
0%. Well, we can't say
No,
0.
I don't think you say 0%. Okay. Well,
5%
we
is
have,
really low.
yeah,
So give a gauge. There's no
yeah.
right answer, no wrong answer. Just give a gauge
No,
as
of
to
course
how
not.
low or high the empathic levels are in your country. Let's
Yeah.
just. And I hope
Give us
that,
a percentage. Yeah, that would be good. That'd
yeah,
be interesting. Okay,
probably.
so we've got Meng Kyang again from
Oh,
Cambodia. Thank you for joining us. Debbie is there. Hello. Michelle Hardy. Hi, Michelle. Zia Haq. Um, let's see. Raja Lechmi. Patricia. Okay, so Patricia says here, empathy is feeling for others. Sympathy is feeling sorry. Yeah.
right.
Nothing wrong in both, but sometimes people don't want sympathy, they prefer empathy. Exactly. Good point.
That's
Oh,
Patricia.
Murali from US is
Oh,
tuning in.
yeah, a good friend.
Yes, our
Hello
good
there.
friend. Yes, talking about Enneagram just now. That's
That's
such
right.
a wonderful thing. So,
Yeah,
yes, thank you for joining us and thank you for your comments. I
yeah,
mean, what do they say? Around 20% in terms of looking at the world's population, right? I think that was the statistics that we last looked at. And they
yeah,
said about 20% of people are naturally empathic and the numbers are dropping. Why are the numbers dropping? Well, number one, it could be the influence of social media with all the graphic imagery that we get bombarded with all the time. I mean, I have sons who play games on their Xbox and PlayStation and all that, and some of them are very, very graphic also. And I think it can numb people to a certain extent. Right? I
mhm,
mean, if you compare to like us in the past, where we just either have newspapers or even on television, some of it gets censored, so you don't see the reality. So when you actually do see something, you definitely feel that tinge in your heart or that pain, and you want to do something, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
saw some interesting research, and let's see again. A lot of this research comes from America. We hardly get this kind of research happening in Asia. So that's so sorry on the in advance, American friends, but this is what I found, right? And if I can recall, it said that the average American is less empathic than 75% of Americans. If you look at 30 years ago. So 30 years ago,
Hmm.
the average American now is less empathic than 75% of people 30 years ago. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, and so that's quite a lot. So what has happened over the last 30 years, right? Is it
Hmm.
the pursuit of money? Well, that would be an interesting research, right? Is it the pursuit
Yeah,
of money? Is it money has to be a huge thing, right? The other
yeah,
one is different kinds of focus, whether it's racism, whether it is less
yeah.
equality. Oh, there are tons of different
There's
reasons.
tons of reasons, exactly. But society in general, I wouldn't say, put a whole sweeping statement and say people are becoming more selfish, but it's difficult because it's so competitive and parents always want the best for their children, right? So they kind of tell, I mean, I've seen this so many times, especially when my boys were growing up, that parents would say, oh no, you just focus on your studies, doesn't matter about anybody else, you just make sure you do well, whatever means, whatever way.
Yeah.
And for me, it was always to my boys' character first. Studies will come later. You just do your best, right? And even if they weren't top students, now today when I look at them as adults, they are caring, they're giving, they do social work, etc. So that's the way I was brought up. That's the way I wanted my boys to be brought up, And
Yeah.
but they definitely have the environment of people who are very self-centered. So it is challenging,
Mhm.
and people look at them like, I remember my older one once telling me when he went into church and he was holding the door for an older woman, and a younger person pushed the old woman out of the way so that they could get through. And he was so annoyed and he said, "Excuse me, I'm not holding the door for you. Have you got no manners?" And the guy looked at him and he said, so what? Who asked you to go and open the door? Why would you waste your effort and your time? Right? And this older lady was so grateful, and she even spoke to my mom, and said, wow, your grandson is such an amazing child and all that. So it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Any responses about what people are saying
Oh,
from other countries?
okay.
Let me check.
Trying not to look at my phone too much because I think I
Yeah.
did it too much last week. Okay, all
People's-
right.
people's
Let's
saying-
see. Hey, they haven't given us any numbers yet. So, okay, maybe they're still kind of thinking about it. But maybe some of you might agree with that 20% or, what you just mentioned about
Right.
in the US. But it is quite a scary thing to think about that if the
It is
world is actually becoming less empathic, especially in times like this with the pandemic and all.
true. So let's see, who is your empathic role model? Role model? Do you have an empathic
Oh,
role model?
Of course, I already said my mama. I should ask you back that
That's my
question.
mama as well, but
No, we always say my mom's a living saint. I mean, seriously, she does. I mean, she's like 85 now. And oops, okay, I'm not supposed to mention her age. She's already threatened me, even though she's not on Facebook. She's like, no talking bad about me. Yeah, but I always say good things about you. I mean, she still goes and she does her volunteer work. She helps people who are younger than her. She's pushing wheelchairs, and sometimes she's hobbling down the road pushing a wheelchair while the maid is talking on the phone. I'm like, okay, I don't understand that, but she just loves doing things for people. And she always says that if I can still manage, what is it? It's a small price to pay. It doesn't feel like anything, and I live to serve. And that's kind of been her way of being always. And I think it's personality too. Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah. And yours? Who's your role model?
So for me, I don't have anyone in particular. Like it's not a certain individual, but I definitely think it's nurses, and I've got real
Oh,
experience.
yes.
So in the army, I was a medic, right? And I was attached to 3 hospitals, and I'll never forget this particular incident, which really got me to see the kind of love and compassion and this kind of special hearts that nurses really have. So one of these nurses told me to go to a certain bed to clean a wound. If you know what a bed sore is, this was a horrible bed sore, and this person was lying stomach facing the bed, right? And so the back facing the upwards,
Ceiling.
yeah, facing upwards, and the buttock had a big bandage. It's called a shell bandage. So the nurse told me go there to clean the wound, right? So I brought my kidney dish and I brought the different chemicals, and I was about to clean the wound. And when I opened up the shell bandage, oh, but I shouldn't be smiling about this one. But when I opened up the shell bandage, it's like almost the whole buttock was gone.
Wow.
And,
Oh my God.
I could not clean that wound. My hand went numb, and I just put back the shell bandage, and I went back to nurse and I said, there's this wound, I really need help. So she dragged me. Well, she didn't drag me, but she brought me back to the bed. And she said, come, let me show you, and she just opened up the shell bandage. And with a real smile, she's just cleaning the wound very happily, right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, and this is what they do day in, day out, very difficult work, right? Cleaning dirty beds and, dealing with very difficult, sickly people who've got lots of demands. And yet they were very, very calm and happy and joyful doing it. So just very, very special hearts, I must say.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I feel like nursing and like being a doctor, okay, other than doctors sometimes become doctors because of the money, but it really is a calling. Not everyone can deal with the blood and gore, I mean, it does take a special kind of being, and it has to be a calling. So definitely a big shout out to nurses, to doctors, to all our healthcare workers, who are watching in or listening in. And I think everybody, especially over this time, understanding what they've had to do, you brought up a really good point. That's true. But I do feel that has to be a calling. And these would be what I think is the naturally empathic people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we got some numbers. Let me just say it to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Michelle says 45%. That's in Singapore. That's a good number, Michelle. Thank you. Debbie says 50 in Hong Kong.
Okay.
Hussein Tawalabe. Yeah, I can't pronounce it. 20%.
Right. 20%. Oops.
Yeah. Tan Huat Chai, 45%.
Malaysia, Kia. Thanks, Huat Chai.
Okay, yeah. Morali says, people are self-centered. Oh, I don't get this. It's the burgers. Okay, whatever that means by Hussein. Okay, Huat Chai is saying, because the leaders today are showing less empathy to the people, staying in power overshadows empathy for the concerns of others. Yeah, that's another big debate that sometimes we do have to talk about, but let's not go into politics.
I think I know. Right. Exactly where Huat Chai was going with this one. So we would have a side conversation on this one.
We'll have another talk. We'll do one session one day on leaders and EQ.
Statistics, because he's a very experienced EQ trainer, and he came from the corporate side and did EQ
nice.
all the time.
Okay.
So maybe next week he can give us some good statistics away from the government, maybe.
Okay. So Andrea is tuning in today. Hi, Andrea. She is yes. So shout out to her, because she is also a nurse in the US, in Oklahoma, and the numbers of cases are also increasing there. Murali says his mother, natural kindness, and Sumei says hi. Nice.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Nice.
Okay. We should get Debbie in soon.
But before that, I just want to
Oh,
cover
before
one more
that.
thing, which I think is important to ask, like, and of course we can ask Debbie this question as well.
Yeah.
When people are empathic, how do, it's a funny question to ask, how do they benefit, but what do they get? What's their fix? Do people need to get a fix, or what are they feeling when they give, because sometimes people may feel, it's like nurses, right? They give their heart, and then sometimes they struggle because of the number of people who could give them a difficult time.
Yeah.
But what's that thing that they really get? Is it something that's so intrinsic that they can't explain and they just do things unconsciously? Or is there something which they know they're getting, which is why they do it? So I hope Andrea can say something about this, because one, she's been a nurse for years.
Yeah.
And,
She's put a love nurses with huge empathy, and a shout out from Mark to Nurse Golden, like that.
That's right. I love
Yeah.
nurses.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Especially with that, Siu Mei was saying compassion and empathy comes from the heart. So I don't know that people can always say that they do this because they want something in return, especially for those who I know, like the nurses and doctors I know, who are really passionate about what they do, and even serving through, here in Singapore with our migrant workers, and they be doing all the swabs, and you can see all the scarring and the marks that they've also had in the long hours they put in. It just, no matter how tired or exhausted they are, they just feel like, I'm making a difference, and it doesn't matter. I don't need the recognition, because we had photographers out and all that, right? So it is intrinsic in so many ways, but we'll hear from them soon.
That's right. Yeah. So it may not be something that they want in return, but it's something that they get a feeling that is so powerful that they just want to keep doing it for others.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess it's the purpose and passion, right?
Yeah, that's right.
My meaning for living. I mean, that's what my mom always says. It's her meaning for living. She lives to serve, and she can't imagine a life any other way. She said, even if she was walking on crutches or if she was in a wheelchair, she'll be wanting to go out there and help somebody else. So,
Right. So I'm really trying to develop, I'm not saying that my empathy levels are very low, but I can't say it's super high, and so that's why the more I hear from these people, these role models, it definitely helps me understand, recognize, and then engage my heart a little bit more and integrate that into my life. So yeah, I'm still on my way. There's a journey to get there as well. Great, we can hear from someone very, very soon, right? This is it's like 8:30, and we want Debbie to be in. She would be a real empathic role model for sure, right? She's been doing many things, and the best part, when we last had our certification, when we asked her which topic she'd like to present, and she said empathy, and I told her it was one of the best empathic sessions I've seen in my life. So I think we're going to hear from someone who really lives it.
So Debbie Bailey is from Hong Kong. I like to call her my international sister. We connected almost immediately when we got to know each other. She's definitely very much a heart person. You can feel her warmth. You can feel a lot of love coming out from her. So Debbie's been in the hospitality industry for like more than 20 years, if I'm not wrong. And she's also the founder of this wonderful project that she's going to share with us called Message in a Shell from Hong Kong. Yeah, so I'm going to stop that share. Hello.
Miss Bailey. Good evening. You have
arrived. I'm so happy to see you. Yes, we're in the same color, blue.
Yes.
Blue, man. Okay, there's some blue there. Okay. Hey, Debbie, thanks so much for joining us.
Yes.
This, short as it may be. We never know how long this is going to go, although we've scheduled till 9 p.m. because there's so much to say, because you're doing so many things, especially during a period like this. So let's start. Let's get the ball rolling, and maybe you can share with us. People do want to know, since we call you the empathic expert, or the compassion, sympathy expert, right? No stress, but we're gonna ask you for a definition first.
Well, I love compassion. I always look at sympathy, empathy, and compassion in different tiers, because I feel like sympathy is really just on a cognitive level, is really just trying to understand how that person's feeling, but you're not putting yourself out towards that feeling, right? You're not suffering with that person. And empathy, I mean, we always say the thing is you're walking in that person's shoes. But also there's a fine definition and balance there, because sometimes you can get empathetic, you can get empathy burnout as well, because we can be so empathetic that, you know, if somebody falls into a hole, you're going to fall in with them. So that's when compassion, which is one thing that, you know, I think in the last 5 months I've been trying to drive, because I think compassion, if you look at the word itself, comes from the Latin word, which is to suffer with, right? But really putting compassion into action. And that's really what I'm trying to do right now with, and finding a medium, because to explain to somebody the difference between sympathy, empathy, and compassion is like, how do you action that? How can you show the world what that actually means? And so that's how this whole thing came about with the shells. So they call me Shellaroo. I deliver shells everywhere.
We'll get to the shells shortly, because I think that's going to be a wonderful story. But I like this part you said, you know, to suffer with. Wow. Yeah. I never quite heard that version, but it's a really interesting version, to suffer with.
Yeah. Especially from the word when you look at passion, right? So in terms of like with the faith, for people who understand about following the passion of people when they're going through the challenge or the difficulty. We know that, Granville, especially because we celebrate Easter. Yeah. But you know what? Something that you said, Debbie, about this burnout with empathy. And I think that's where sometimes people also need to recognize this, that when you have too much empathy, it definitely can affect you. You know, because people always say, you know, I want my empathy to just hit the roof and be really like, I want to be the most empathic person in the world. But that's where, when I was sharing in my experience, because I had to look after my own kids and my own, you know, my own well-being, I had to put other people aside. And as painful as it was, because I did see people were suffering a little bit more than me, but I could only do so much. You know, because I could, right? So I think people have to recognize that, yes, giving is so important, but I guess, but when a crisis occurs, then of course, sometimes, your own needs tend to get forgotten. You know, it's everybody else's needs first.
I also think some people have to realize that when we think empathy, it's not necessarily the relationship to negativity, right? It's also be empathetic in a positive way, like celebrating somebody's success. Sometimes when we look at empathy, we think, oh no, this person's suffering. Do I want to walk in their shoes, but their shoes too tight? It's not going to fit me. But then how about when somebody's really happy and they're sharing that? I mean, you can be empathetic that way too, right? And share the joy.
We share the joy. Right? Be happy with them.
Yeah,
exactly.
When we sing a birthday song, we're happy with them, even though it's not our birthday. We wish we could blow the candle, but we can't. But we feel like we're having that birthday as well.
Celebrate the successes as much as you celebrate the pains together. You know?
Before we get into the shell, sorry, Marion, you were about to say something?
No, it's okay.
Before we get to the shells, because that's a really wonderful project, you know, I'd like to know, Debbie, at what point or which part of your life did you start to recognize this was such an important aspect in your life? How did it unfold? Where did it start? I know that could be a long story, but give us the...
I mean, it all started, I think came from childhood, because I mean, you know, sometimes when I look at like my dad, for example, and I wrote this article and I remember this vividly, and we're on the train and I was sitting down and he says, look down the aisle. So I looked down the aisle and he goes, you know, everybody down there has their own story, be it good or bad. And I remember that so vividly, because I was thinking about the other person. I was like, wow, you know, that's so true. You know, every family has their own thing, right? It's just that we don't go and broadcast it to the world. And so that really got me thinking. And I think all along, you know, I had a sibling that wasn't very well. I was taken care of. And so that's why I relate to that empathy burnout as well. You know, so yeah, you can, but there is a point where you've got to make a choice. Can you help? But you can still be compassionate, right? Because compassion is universal, regardless of what, you know, religious views that we have, political views. This is the one thing which I am passionate about, that this word is a universal thing.
Yeah.
And so that childhood, that memory on the train was the thing that triggered it for me. Yeah.
You know, I was doing some... Before we get to, again, I know I keep saying before we get to your shell project, but there's one thing I want to add, because when I started reading about empathy, I thought, you know, how does this soft heart lead to results? So for the business world, because quite a few of our viewers are from obviously they are business people, many are from insurance, quite a few in sales, they are leaders as well. They might be thinking, okay, if I start being empathic, what difference would it make in the business world, or what results would I get? So they'll be surprised. In fact, I was surprised when I read this some time ago, that it actually makes leaders a lot more effective. Their ratings from their staff becomes a lot higher. When hospitals, doctors are a lot more empathic, get much higher ratings from, say, the patients. Negotiators are a lot stronger when they're empathic. Almost every field I notice, if you're empathic, the returns are a lot higher, even though you might think it's like one of those very soft competencies. Actually, it's not a soft competency, it's an advanced competency. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I think even as we move along, when we look at, World Economic Forum came out with this whole data about, what's going to be important in the next 10 years or next 5 years. And emotional intelligence has actually moved up to number 5, right? But when we look at emotional intelligence and empathy, this is going to be key because we have to embrace, artificial intelligence as well. But that whole, and the new generation where we need to retain people, the retention levels are going to be key, right? So yeah, I think there's a whole, I think it's key. And the thing is, we have to have empathy and not have, and not have things and expect things in return, because you can give, right? But there's a lot of people out there think, I've given so much, what do I get? But if you're always thinking about what I'm going to get, it's going to be really difficult too.
Yeah, it's not easy for people to see the greater good. I think that concept, it might have been a lot easier many years ago where people were more, especially when they lived in villages or they lived in communities. So the community spirit was a lot stronger. But if you look at whatever's happening today and the fact that a lot of businesses will go online, a lot of us will start working from home until they figure a way to deal with the pandemic and to deal with the virus. This is the new normal for us. There's going to be a lot less connection. And it is it's a mindset shift that as leaders, it's not going to be that easy. A simple thing in terms of talking about empathy, because, I do etiquette classes and I talk about things like protocol and all that. And I remember recently having a conversation with one manager who was very, very annoyed that his staff during meetings while they're at home, the kids are coming around, the animals are coming and disturbing them. And he's like, this is not professional. You should lock yourself in a room and not handle your children and not be having your animals everywhere. And that little thing of compassion for your staff, they may not have this huge house that you have where you can, have the maids that you have, who can look after. So it's this mindset shift that it's not going to be easy, but I think with time, and again, the statistics are showing that EQ is so important and it is going to be and it's always been one of the very important skills for successful businesses and business leaders.
Yeah. So let's get on to Miss Debbie Bailey's Shell project, right? We were very intrigued when we saw whatever you're doing with the shells, and we want to really find out more about how did this start, where did it start, what have you been doing, and what kind of differences you've been making, and the ripples that are going around in Hong Kong.
Okay, so I'm going to try and keep it very condensed, but it all started with a walk on the beach. So I live on Lantau, so I would go over to the beach, and one day I just picked up a shell, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to paint this for my mum. So I painted it for her, and she loved it, and I thought, wow, look at that response, isn't that awesome? So I'll do it again. But then I realized actually picking shells up from the beach is not a good thing because, the biodiversity and all that kind of stuff. And so one day I went to the market and I was buying seafood, and I said to the lady, I want some scallops. And she goes, okay, what do you do with the shells? She goes, I throw them away. I was like, no, don't throw it away. It's a canvas. So I painted her a shell so that she could understand my purpose and what I was trying to do. And so now I have all these seafood vendors who come off the big boats, and they all have a shell now, and they all part of the creative process. So the whole thing is just expanding and expanding. And what's happened is that they understand what compassion is now. And the whole idea that compassion should be contagious. And the only way we can really do that is through action, right? Is finding a medium, because to tell somebody a theory is very difficult. It's like, oh, be compassionate, be kind, be loving, do some meditation. But, for them to receive it, it's tangible. They've got it in their hands. So they've got that feeling. So that's how it started. So they're involved. And so I started painting the first 60, and I was like, oh man, can't do this by myself. So I started looking for local artists in Hong Kong. So we have about 30 artists working right now. And what they do is this is some of their creations. This is from an artist. And so they've been involved as well. And also the compassion goes to them because I'm now featuring their work, and they feel appreciated, they feel the love. And then, so one of these shells will be kept potentially for a book about the community, and then one that we're going to place out to in Hong Kong for somebody else to find. But they create and they write the message on the shell, and so that gets sprinkled around. And then we've just run some workshops for kids, because I thought, okay, so who else am I going to influence? So the kids, this is by Rajul. She's actually going to be featured on Sunday. Yep. So for the kids, I ran the first, I mean, I don't know much about art. I just get a pen and I just start painting. But to teach the kids about compassion in action and say, this is a white shell. It's not for you. It's for a friend. You know, so what colors are you going to show your friends? And then what color makes people happy? And they were like, yellow, orange, green. I was like, why yellow? It's the sun. And one said green for the trees. So again, it's that relationship, understanding what triggers other people. And so parents were not involved. The only thing they were allowed to do was to help them write the message. And I didn't want them to, and I said, if you had to give this to somebody you didn't know who was having a bad day and you just want to make them happy, what would you write? And so, you know, again, that was to another set of community. And now we're working with some NGOs as well. So Branches of Hope we had, and these are asylum refugee women who are just phenomenal, created these amazing shells. So really, it's just trying to spread it around. And, you know, people have found them. They don't necessarily, not everybody's on social media, but I have received a few messages. And the one person that sent me a message, and I remember this vividly. And she said to me, she goes, you know, I have depression. I'm really sad. And I don't know if it's fate, but I was walking along and I found this shell and there was a message. And I was like, wow. She goes, can I buy 2 shells? I go, I don't sell, but I will paint it for you. So I delivered 2 to her. But again, it's like, you know, I had this message I wrote the other day on a shell. It's like helping one person might not change the whole world, but it could change the life of one. And that really is the whole purpose of the shell. Yeah. And it's upcycling. So we're not, you know, these are things that would have been thrown away, but it's a beautiful canvas. And beautiful. Yeah, so I just go sprinkling all this stuff around and sharing art and, you know, showing that the intention of the art and the time it takes to create this is it's time. It's
beautiful.
It's valuable, you know?
I was just wondering, when I looked at this shell on the right-hand side, it seems like you've done some kind of treatment on the whitish side. Do you, or do you just wipe it well?
Okay, so it's a whole process. These shells come back. They take 4 days. I have to soak them. I get a grinder. I grind all the algae that comes off. I then put a primer on top. So the primer, then you can then use different mediums of paint. And again, there's no boundaries to what anybody, you know, if anyone wants a shell, I'm going to give it to them. If they want to take part, they can take. I've got hundreds at home. So anybody in Hong Kong, if you want to paint, let me know.
Yeah, I think one of them is asking. Later, you can put the website in the chat group so that they'll know. But it's called Message in a Shell Hong Kong, right?
Yeah, it's just right there on the tag. It's the same name, so Message in a Shell HK.
And you're on Facebook as well as Instagram, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a wonderful initiative. I think, you know, if you're walking along the park and you're having a lousy day, to pick up something beautiful like this, the painting is already so attractive, you know, and it doesn't matter who's done it or whatever. But, you know, I think so much like law of attraction, the words will probably speak to the person when they need it most. And you're very right. It doesn't matter that you might only be affecting one person. One person is still one life.
Yeah,
one life, you know, and you have that one life to live. So we want to support everyone that we can. So it's a wonderful initiative, Debbie. Very proud of you.
I think positivity is what we need now. And I always think kindness is the antidote to a lot of things that's happening in the world. You know, even these shells, I've started giving it to the villagers, and, you know, it was just last week and I gave it to them. It was so funny because when we talk about compassion and we give, sometimes when the person receives, they're like, what do you want from me? I was like, nothing. I just want to give it to you. And then it got me thinking, it's like, we should allow ourselves to receive kindness too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Debbie, I want to find out, you know, like a shell like this. I mean, seriously, my art sucks big time. So I want to ask myself a question in terms of how long I would take, but how long would you take to create something like this? This one?
This one I did is the Tree of Life. That probably like an hour, 2 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That's very good. 2 hours is, I thought it'd be a lot longer than that. It's so intricate looking.
2 hours. And actually,
Yeah.
they're all great. I actually have one here. This is amazing. I'm now like the shell connoisseur, but this is a Scottish scallop. It's as big as my head. Look at that.
Yeah, beautiful. Those are the ones they make into evening clutches and all that, right? Yeah, yeah.
You think this would have been thrown away?
So
Yeah. But I think many times they go back to the sea anyway, right? So because they'll be broken down with time. So that's something I'm curious about. I'm sure you do that because you're very eco-conscious also, that these are non-toxic paints.
Oh yeah,
I think we do want to put a shout out there to let people know because I know you. Yeah.
These are, I use artisan paints. They're from Amazon, but non-toxic all the way.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
What hopes and aspirations do you have? Like, for example, do you hope to create a movement out of this? And what I mean by a movement, do you hope it spreads to other countries? You know, hopefully some of our viewers.
I'm just going to let it happen organically. It's like I said, you know, when you say you give something, if you expect something in return, that's not the intention. The intention is to give it out. I mean, okay, great. If people want to do it in another country, I'm happy that they do it, but to remain to the purpose, to make it contagious and impact the person who finds it. That's all I want. That's really, that's it. Because if you start chasing this and chasing that, you can lose sight of what's really.
You lose sight of, exactly. And I think we talked about that. Sorry. I think we talked about that even in purpose and passion, right? I mean, of course, the aspect of doing something that you love, that you can also help make money. But sometimes you can't just focus on the money at the end of the day, or wanting, you know, recognition for it and all that, but do it with a good intention, which I totally see that's what you're doing. And it's just to spread a word and a bit of comfort, especially in times like this. So I love that.
I like what you said, because sometimes like a movement sounds very deliberate. It sounds like it could look like recognition. It could be look like growth. You know, I want to start something.
Or there's an agenda behind it.
There's no agenda. I mean, it keeps evolving, and it's like right now some people want to paint with me, and I'm like, okay, I'll run a workshop, but what I'm going to do is there's a lot of NGOs throughout this COVID period who are struggling right now, and they're all going out to help other people. So I select one NGO a month, which I will donate to. So if I do run them, I'm not sure how yet, figure that one out. The intent is, okay, we need to stay to that core purpose, make kindness contagious. How do we help others? Then all that proceeds will go to an NGO per month, which I feel is.
And you're very right. Yeah, the NGOs are struggling. I mean, all of us, even in our Rotary and all that, the number of donors, a lot of NGOs are closing and they can't because they can't travel, you know, and connecting online is very different. So a lot of projects are suffering. A lot of people are suffering. You know, our food program, our World Food Program, a lot of things are being highly affected. So, So I think that's a really good cause. And, you know, art is always therapeutic for people. So even if they don't have to say anything, they don't have to do anything, but they have an opportunity to just express themselves through the art, I think that gives them a sense of purpose also, gives them some release, knowing that they can do something for someone else. Yeah.
I mean, it's like saying, like, you know, we have compassion practices, you know, like when we did the workshop and we did the Just Like Me.
Just Like Me,
Yeah. And it's trying to translate that through the medium of art.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, even for artists who worked, you know, it's quite funny. They're very critical of, you know, the work that they produce. Is it good? It's beautiful. Everybody's different, you know. You can just paint and, you know, share with the world what you want to spread out, and also share your personal work, because so many artists also don't have that platform unless you can be selling $1 million pieces, right? A lot of this stuff is hidden at home. Like, take it out. I want to see it all.
Exactly.
No, Debbie, when I was having a chat with you a couple of days or yesterday, you know, you shared a story about approaching these three shops, and there was a lady or something, right, who was all alone. Can you share that story?
Oh yes, this is so it's actually on the Facebook. So you know how I was spreading shells out. So I go on the trail. So this particular lady, I was going to place a shell out, and I was running, and I saw these 3 shops. So the first shop, this lady, really aggressive, came out. She's much younger. It's like, come to my shop, have something to eat. So I intentionally went to the third shop, and this lady, she's probably in her late 80s, And this is the lady I gave the shell to. I said, I just want you to have this. And, you know, that smile, you'll see that photo on Facebook, was on Instagram, as it is just the most genuine, like it just like got to me. And so now every time I go on that trail, I'll see her once a week. So again, compassion, it's not, okay, again, you can find it, but it's also making time for another person. So I actually go there, and I was listening to her stories, how long she's lived in this village, you know, how many kids has she got. She's just so happy, and she's like, I'm going to save you the coldest Coke Zero in my fridge. Come and see me tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really
nice.
lovely.
Okay.
This thing
Very
is intriguing, what you're doing with these shells. I think, you know, our viewers need to know what you're doing with this project here and where you're leaving things like this.
Oh, yes, I put them on Instagram. So I hide them in different locations, and then I put it under stories. I tag the location where the shell is at. I might put little hints. And actually, a lot of my friends actually help me spread these out, because I can't literally I'm not an octopus. Yeah, so people find them. So we've placed about 100 of these out now. Yeah.
Nice.
They can find
So
it.
if you're living in Hong Kong, you can do that. For the rest of us, we can just admire it. Yeah.
Singapore.
Hey, so Grant, we've got quite a lot of questions that I think perhaps we might want to also respond to some of them, because, you know, I mean, this is really a wonderful, beautiful concept, especially, you know, when you have the time and it's on a social basis to help and support. But I think at the same time, you know, this topic of empathy and compassion, we still have to translate it back to business, because a lot of our viewers and listeners are also business people. Yeah, so there's a question here that would you share strategies for developing empathy? And that comes from Siru.
Siru is staying in Hong Kong as well.
Oh, she's in Hong Kong also.
That's
all right. So yes, I mean, you know, obviously in our classes we do talk about how we should develop empathy. But do you wanna answer that first, Grant?
But thanks for reminding us about that. You know, this one we wanted to just share, you know, how a little bit about empathy, and then some projects that are going on, and a little bit of insight into empathy. But I think, yes, skill-wise, we may have to go deeper, because if we share just one or two insights, it's going to be a bit superficial. But Siru, we will definitely get back to you. As my good friend whom I met way back in 2000.
So Debbie, if you just had to give one word of advice, I mean, you know, you're also a trainer. You've been doing this. You've been in hospitality for more than 20 years, you know, and in hospitality, people's levels of empathy can be up, can be down, you know, because you've got all kinds of customers, you've got all kinds of different people. If you had to give a person one word of advice, sorry, not one word, but just one advice about how to develop empathy, what would that be?
So I always say, when I train, especially in hospitality, is that, you know, I think reading people's, being observant about people, the way that, you know, their body language, their expression, facial expression, and, you know, even if it's good or bad, look at it as like we're curators of experiences. I always say we curate. I mean, I love art. So, I mean, I always look as like we curate everything. You know, if this, you know, it's like even with COVID now, you know, when people travel for the first time, how important is that going to be? Every single person is going to remember that experience. And as any service provider or businesses out there, that first connection is going to be remembered for a long time. So I would say, yeah, I like to think of it as curators.
You know, I think it is a really very good question, because why? In the business world, quite often, people who are not so empathic, especially when we measure their emotional intelligence and then they get a score which is very low, and of course they get concerned with their score, and then the next question that pops up is, so what can I do about this bad score? You know, and it's never easy to tell someone who's got low empathy what to do, because it goes against the grain of their natural personality. But what I found, because I must admit, I wasn't the most empathic person maybe 10 years ago, but I told myself then, one of the first things I started to do then was to slow down. Slow down and notice other people and give them the space, try to shut up as much as I can. That's one for sure.
Yeah, becoming a better listener,
That's right. Becoming a better listener is one. And the other one is just to notice. If I slow down and notice and start to just really look for a while, I'll probably see more things than if I did not look. So slowing down, noticing, and being able to process the thoughts in terms of what they're saying. That is just like a first step, like a prelude.
Yeah, a first step, exactly. But again, Gran, we've been talking to leaders about this over and over again. Yes, empathy is so important, but for a lot of them, their choice, it is a conscious choice to not be so empathic because they sometimes feel that if I connect too deeply with you, it becomes a challenge for me in enforcing certain ways, certain things, as well as if I get too emotionally connected to you, if it comes to like in this time where people are losing their jobs and I have to fire you or I have to shift you around or I have to give you a pay cut and it's not going to be easy. Right. And to make those kind of choices. So I think in terms of self-preservation, you're going to get certain leaders who have to make that choice of being less empathic sometimes. Right. I can still feel for you, but it's the way it's not like I'm going to be tough on you and be mean the way I say it, but I think sometimes it has to be self-preservation because I think about my sister and, she had a job at one point where she had to let go 300 staff and tell all these 300 staff that because of the restructuring of the organization. And it was extremely painful for her. And all I could say to her was, you have to step back and stop getting so connected and feeling for everyone. And it was hard.
And at the same, it'll be hard to step into your sister's shoes because obviously that was a very difficult task, right? 300 people and the kind of news you have to tell them and to face the kind of stories they're going to share with you as well. I think in those circumstances, we can only do the best we can, and sometimes, yes, if we put ourselves out there and we believe that, we have to save every soul, that's when we get into trouble.
Yeah.
But when we do our best in every way possible, giving your heart in a way you could, whatever you could offer, I think people will notice your intention, and it's not for them to notice, but how much you can give so that you can make the experience as easy or as palatable as possible for the other party. What do you say, Debbie? The empathy, compassion, like spirit.
I love this title.
A lot of people who, especially in hospitality, are losing their jobs right now, and I think it's a real challenge. But I sometimes think when you're empathetic and you have that compassion, sometimes that conversation can be easier.
Yeah.
Because, and also the person receiving it, if you have that connection, they know it's not personal. It's not because I want to do this. It's just that at this moment, a lot of people realize that there isn't that choice.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people who've gone through that process right now. Not easy. But the relationship with their boss is still amazingly good.
Yes, it is. Exactly.
They're also watching out for them as well. Like they created groups, if there's jobs out there, they're sharing that because they know it's not because you're not, is your ability. It's just that these are the circumstances that we're in right now. And I'm sure that if things come back, these people would get their jobs back too.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, it's they may not get what they want now. In fact, they'll probably if they're going to lose their job. But you know what? It's for the long haul as well. That relationship that can be built depending on the kind of experiences you give them at the point when they need you most.
Exactly.
Like, you're not God. You can't change the circumstances, but you can do the best during those circumstances.
I mean, just imagine if that person wasn't an empathetic leader and wasn't compassionate. The person who's going is like, thank God I have to go now.
But I mean, I think as you're very right, you just do your best. You want to support them. You want to say it to them in the best way possible. You don't want to come across too tough. You're not doing it because it's a personal agenda. It's not vindictive or anything to that extent, but it's the situation, but I can see how that can lead to burnout for so many of the leaders who are in that position. I mean, again, remember Gran, she had a heart attack 3 months down the road after this exercise because she was emotionally distraught, having to put out, 300 people. So it was not easy, and so in so many ways, I think as much as we, it's not like you want to be overly empathic, but you also need to, so you have to adjust based on situations.
But Debbie, is there anything you want to say as some parting words, if you want our viewers to tune into something or look at something? Or
I mean, I'm just really happy to have been able to share what I'm doing. And it doesn't mean we can't do it anywhere else, or people can find a different medium to do it right now. I think people have time now, and it's good to like sort of reset. Reset mode is, we always talk about, a kinder world, but what are we doing individually to make a difference, right? And I mean, I'm doing it through shells. There could be other ways that we could be doing that too.
That's
And
right.
you know, that quote that I put on that shell about, you know, helping one person might not change the whole world, but it could change the life for one person. It just takes one person to make
Right.
that difference. And if you did that, you feel good. That person feels good. It's like a win-win situation.
Super.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
words of parting words. Thank you so much, Debbie,
Thank
for
you so
being here
much.
with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes.
Nice. Thank you.
Yes, keep up the great work. You know, so proud of you. So happy to be knowing that you're doing all this beautiful stuff and you are such a beautiful person inside and out. So we
Right.
appreciate that.
And when you come back to Singapore, please throw 100 shells around our shores.
I might.
Oh, yes.
I might give you a shell SP or something.
Put a few in my
We would
bag
love
so I
that.
can come near my
Yeah.
place as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much,
Debbie.
Debbie. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Thank you to all our viewers for all your comments and your likes and all the sharing that you've given to us. All
Thank you
right.
very much. And good night, everyone. Thanks, Debbie, for joining us. And we
Thank
will
you.
cook up a topic for next week and let everyone else know. All right.
So once again, thanks to all our viewers. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. Stay safe and stay healthy.
That's right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.